Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our GEPCOMM Advocacy Panel discussion. I am Allen Cometa, and I will be your moderator for today, along with my group members are Allen Cometa and Cael Verdan, who may represent the body of farmers, agricultural sector, marginalized, or any advocate towards environmental sustainability, while Fransisco may represent the body of large companies, investors, landlords, or any beneficiaries that may disapprove of the move. There are 5 sectors that will be discussed, with each having allotted estimation time of 3 minutes and may further be deemed extended as necessary. Let us begin. There have been persisting controversial issues between the Lumads and other parties such as being oppressed and killed from schools, communities, and more. In around 1964, such scenarios happened between large companies and the lands of the Lumad, where there was dispute between converting their agricultural land for commercial use. This signifies a larger issue for the Philippines. Over-exploitation of 2 simultaneous trends, high population growth and growing land degradation. The demand of land areas and deforestation leads to alarming concerns such as disasters and soil erosion, various pollution and loss of natural resources, and more. It is undeniable that the government sector plays a huge part in this. According to our research, execution of the laws is unreliable and inconsistent. Implementation of bills does not promote agricultural and environmental growth, but rather the opposite. With this in mind, how do you specifically propose solutions to cater for these problems? Ma'am Cael, you may start first.
Okay, so based on the problems that you have mentioned, we have identified possible solutions that will allow for a more effective implementation of the bills and laws protecting our forests and lands. First, you will need to cooperate with the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. Their support would be a great help in terms of promoting our cause and providing us additional resources in order to achieve our goals for the environment. It would also help if the government sector will cooperate with scientists and or professionals who are qualified to create a restoration management plan. LGUs should also cooperate with the national government in order to create a plan that would address their environmental concerns and at the same time assist and supervise for the protection of our forests and lands.
It is a very good point, Ma'am Cael. Fransisco, do you have anything to add?
I agree with the inclusion of the government sector in the creation of a restoration management plan, as their inputs are important in making sure that the operation will be successful and reduces the risk of additional costs. Regarding the creation of the restoration management plan, what steps will be taken in the creation of the plan to ensure that the economic and environmental aspects are considered equally?
Cael, you may
To
answer
ensure that
Francisco's question.
will benefit both the economic and environmental aspects in our country, there must be cooperation between different sectors of our government. Even if the NR is the main department involved in this kind of issue, it would also help. It would also be a great help if they will be able to gather opinions from professionals across different fields. For example, they could cooperate with the National Economic and Development Authority in discussing what would be best for both sectors.
If I may summarize everything, the Restoration Management Plan attempts to restore what has already been left and degraded from exploitation of the various sectors involved. But the root cause of these degradations are the individual sectors themselves. The mining industry, for instance, is a huge concern, much evident during 2012 when a lot of large companies were shut down by the late Gina Lopez. And we have to also consider that the Philippines is the 5th most mineralized country and leading exporter of natural resources. So when a country relies on natural exports as one of its main GDP, what solutions do you propose to mitigate the source of environmental degradation arising from mining industries? Francisco, you may start for this one.
Among the solutions that we have proposed in order to mitigate environmental degradation is the review of already existing programs and policies, allowing the modification and adjustment of these existing policies that will cater both to the mining companies and the environment. Additionally, these mining areas shall be monitored by government officials to ensure that the mining companies are complying with these regulations. Additionally, the mining areas will be monitored and will also be tasked to submit non-confidential reports regarding their operation and the status of the environment, ensuring that full transparency with the public. Once these operations have been finished, the mining companies are then needed to rehabilitate and reforest the land area. We have also proposed the withdrawal of DNR Administrative Order Number 2018-13, lifting which focuses on the acceptance, processing, and approval of applications for exploration permits. Lastly, we have proposed the dismissal of the ban lift proposal by the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines. Doing this would reduce open pit mining for select minerals under DAO 2017-10, thereby reducing the amount of damage caused in these mining areas.
It is very good to note that DENR Order Number 2018-13 lifting was lifted by the Duterte administration to attract foreign investors to do mining operations here in the Philippines. Ms. Cael, do you have anything to ask or add regarding this point of view?
Yes, I do have a question for Mr. EJ. You mentioned about the need for mining companies to rehabilitate and reforest the land area. How or what can be done to ensure that the rehabilitation of these areas are fully prioritized by the mining companies?
To ensure that the rehabilitation of these areas are fully prioritized by the mining companies, a restoration management plan will be given to the mining company, which must be accomplished, and failure to do so will result in penalties. Government officials or LGUs may also be assigned to these areas wherein they may monitor and guide the mining companies in the restoration of these areas.
While monitoring and regulating the practices and permits of these mining companies is vital, it is also important for us to understand that irresponsible mining extends beyond actual legal practices. Responsible mining, according to a documentary from ABS-CBN, involves environmental sustainability, economic growth, and community development. But as mentioned, it was a very good point that if the excise tax was just 2% and no sign of community development such as schools and hospitals nearby the former mining sites, not to mention the unsustainable practices involved such as environmental degradation, then it is clearly irresponsible mining and may be liable to violations in regards to the Philippine law. But we also have to know that it is not only the mining sector that contributes to this problem, but also the land developing and free exporting sector. From the studies presented, it is evident that in 1970, logging shares 12.5% of the country's total GDP, and large deforestation rate went at its peak at 300,000 hectares per year. Consequently, it cost the country to only have 5.5 million hectares of forest in 1999 from its previous 21 million hectares in 1900s. Although large reforestation efforts have been in progress since 2012, more often than not, during the very least, it is still persisting and felt by the communities. And this is where typhoons, where deep flash floods occur, even possibly consuming the entire two-story house. Conversion of agricultural land for commercial, industrial, or residential land can considerably be comparable to deforestation. From a case study in 1997 by Moya, Laguna experienced a comparable decrease in rice area by more than 50% from 1971 to 1992, and decrease in rice production around 21% due to land conversion, With the efforts of reforestation and existing laws and permits such as the Presidential Decree, the Vice Penal Code of the Philippines, and DNR permits, attempting to mitigate these problems, the issues still persist, and that these are limited to permits only as opposed to proactive environmental development. What possible solutions can we provide here? Mr. Allen Cometa, you may start for this one.
Although there were existing laws and permits such as Section 68 of Presidential Decree 705 and 1930 revised Penal Code of the Philippines and mandatory for any individual or companies to reach the local offices of DNR called CENRO or Community Environment and Natural Resources Office. Before clearing a tree, these provisions are limited to permits only. With this, the group proposes that the DNR reviews and increases the area of protected Philippine agricultural land and forest, especially in rural regions. Next is to regulate the allowable commercialization of agricultural land within an area. Third is the land and real estate developers with modern large-scale projects be obligated to include trees and nature within their modern infrastructures with specific parameters. Then, land and real estate developers should be required to submit a semi-annual environmental report and documentations of the permitted actions by the DNR and the corresponding final environmental report with the final infrastructure. And lastly, to promote the use of sustainable goods and practices such as integration and utilization of solar panels. That's all.
Yes. So that means after providing the permit, the land developers are still liable to protect and care for the environment because they are required to submit reports. But if I may add, there is an ongoing. First of all, do we have any questions from that you may want to add?
In the semi-annual environmental report, to be submitted by land and real estate developers, what are the factors that must be considered by the DNR when creating the final environmental report?
For the semi-annual report to be submitted by the land and real estate developers, DNR should consider for the final infrastructure, especially to review and increase the area of protected Philippine agricultural land and forests in rural areas.
Since infrastructure was mentioned, if I may add, there is an ongoing study called Cooling Singapore, and from the report, asphalt, cement, and shingle grease actually absorbs and emits more heat than soil, leading to a 7 degrees Celsius difference between urban city areas and rural vegetation area. It is relatable to the Philippines because the more ratio it favors the urban population rather than our environmental areas, the more energy it demands, pollutants such as heat occur, and eventually leads to further risks such as heat stroke and more. So the answers and follow-up questions provided by both groups are vital to understanding steps in mitigating this concern. While this mining sector, land developers, and free exporting companies are the exploiters of natural resources, it is notable that the effects are experienced by the community and not them. But more of a concern for these communities is their education or their sense of urgency and proactiveness in assisting their well-being in terms of their geographical environmental status, which in most cases is not treated, resulting in a devastating disasters during typhoons. Such problems include high environmental risk, to lack of participation and involvement in environmental causes, and consumption of non-sustainable goods. What are the possible individualistic movements one can attempt to do in order to contribute to the environmental sustainability. Ma'am Cael, do you have any takes on regards with this?
Yes, it takes collective effort in order to achieve our goals in protecting our environment. Each individual must be encouraged to participate in environmental initiatives, be involved with the community in terms of promoting environmental protection, reforestation, and cultivation. We also need to start the change within ourselves. We should refrain from using non sustainable goods and practices. We could apply the three R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle in our daily lives and help restore our forests by planting trees. Not everyone has the privilege to consider whether this material is sustainable or not, which is why we need innovative, practical local inventions that could replace the use of conventional goods and practices.
Yes. Replacing plastic, for instance, for a brown paper bag or a reusable eco bag is very useful in preserving our environment. But I think Mr. E.J. Francisco has a question in regard to this.
Yes, I agree on the role of the community in greatly increasing the effectiveness of this restoration. However, in the case of a pandemic like today, how can the community adapt its movements to allow the community to become motivated to help in reforestation during a pandemic?
Since there is an ongoing pandemic, helping in the reforestation of our forests doesn't mean that you have to go out and plant a tree. A simple share on social media about our advocacy can go a long way. But in order to motivate the community, I do think that they must be regularly updated on whatever progress we have and continue to spread awareness about the state of our forests and lands. For now, it's best that we let those who are capable to do the physical activities do their thing. As much as we like to encourage people to participate in tree planting activities, it is important that we also follow the health protocols, which are to avoid gathering and as much as possible, if one can, to stay at home.
I, I agree, helping in the reforestation is not limited to planting trees, but can also be done through things like share advocacy through social media.
I also agree. I think that social media presence is very helpful in today's time and actually gives every individual a sense of achievement and progress and that they are involved in these progressing environmental causes. While both groups iterate that the community must also be individualistically involved, the same rule, the research of the botany sector regarding the most efficient and beneficial plants to restore environmental greenery will undoubtedly pace the process up. With this, what are possible solutions or plans that you have researched that will be most useful not only on a large scale basis, but also even within our homes? Anyone may answer. Mr. Allen Cometa, would you like to add something to this?
During the process of restoring forests, one of the many concerns will be the tree species' capability to restore the environment's previous state, such as serving as a new habitat for animals, new food source for the community, and its ability to withstand typhoons while protecting the community from flooding or landslides. So this group proposes to consult botanists and dendrologists. Use of kupang and bagalunga, use of white lawan that can be grow up to 30 to 40 meters, mayapis, and tanggil, inclusion of coral vine, mulawing baging, kalapaw, bulakan, abuhab baging, career, and the addition of Rhodymachera hainanensis.
Thank you. But one question I have in mind is, are these plants widely available in the market in the Philippines for
Yes,
ordinary consumers to buy?
yes, this is widely available in the market. You can found it in uh plants shop for plants.
So with this knowledge in mind, we have now specific plants recommended by botanists that can be further beneficial and more effective rather than other plants. For the question and answer, PJ Francisco, do you have any question in your mind?
I also have a question regarding the impact of the plants in the biodiversity in the area. If there would be a negative impact on the biodiversity in the area, what steps would be done to lessen its negative effects on the area?
No, there is no negative impact on the biodiversity in the area. These plants have been proven and have been found to be capable of improving physical health through regulating indoor air quality and microclimates, thereby improving a person's environmental comfort. That's all.
Thank you for your wonderful questions. As much as we would like to continue, we have a limited time. So, summarizing the points stated by both groups, the support from the government is a dire need for environmental restoration and sustainable programs to succeed. For instance, the government's regulations, laws, policies, and permits regarding environmental sustainability. Legislations should also proceed towards protecting and promoting the environment, while the execution of existing orders and forest protection should be properly implemented and carried out by their respective authorities such as the DNR, LGUs, governors, and other government sectors involved. Several sectors also contribute to the fast degradation rate of environment, such as the mining sector, land developers, and the pre-exploiting industry. It was congruent with both groups that the topics discussed and evidences gathered that there is an irresponsible commercial use of land. And even though reforestation programs have been in effect since 2012, the deforested areas are still high even today. It is also mentioned that greenery can be integrated with modern infrastructure. This is also an opportunity for the plants proposed by the botanists to be applied on a large-scale basis aside from home. All these points are steps in mitigating a global issue that highly persists today. And without an immediate sense of urgency, the degradation may only continue to worsen at the point of irreversible effects. Most important of all, we call everyone to action by participating in these environmental efforts. Such efforts can even be in small gestures such as social media presence, home planting, use of green-friendly items and materials, and more. Again, we invite everyone to participate in making our Earth, particularly our country, green again. Thank you.